Garland Nixon here, and we're hanging out with our friend Larry C. Johnson. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon here. We're hanging out with Larry Johnson. There's a lot going on right now. There's so many places we could go. Actually, I am happy to say, for those who don't know, they're at least talking about the START treaty. They're negotiating. So that we don't know where that's going. Maybe nowhere. But what is it? Isn't it something like better to jaw than war? Or
Yeah.
Heard that. Yeah. So at any rate, at least they're talking.
I hadn't heard that. That was just reported today.
Yeah, that's been reported. They're negotiating. All right. So we're going to go to Larry's site because he's always got good stuff there. And his website is
sonar21.com.
There we go. Son of the American Revolution. You can see he's got a lot of great articles we got to talk about. The one we are going to discuss is Iran adamantly rejects U.S. attempt to control upcoming negotiations over Iran's nuclear program. 9 Yet.
Yeah.
The answer is nada.
Yeah.
Yet means yet. Larry,
yet means net, nine. Yeah. All the different ways to say no in different languages.
Yeah. If what was his name? If Herman Cain was German, 999.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So what's happening, Larry? Iran's is a big fat no, huh?
Man, I felt like I had to put on like a neck brace after the flip-flop on the news yesterday. I had whiplash. So I was getting ready to do the show with Danny Davis. And just before going on air, I saw a flash that, hey, they've canceled the talks. Talks are off. And then it got some more explanation that the United States had come back. The original agreement was Iran and the U.S. were going to sit down and talk about making sure that Iran doesn't have nuclear weapons and uranium enrichment. That was it. Now, Israel's been insisting, no, we also got to do, they've got to get rid of all their ballistic missiles and they've got to end all support for Hamas and Hezbollah. And in the past, Iran had said no. So yesterday, the United States said, okay, we got to have the talks in Istanbul. And we're going to have to talk about this or else there are no talks. And Iran said, okay, no talks. Basically it told you, shove it up your backside. So then there was a lot of scrambling back and forth. And there were some quotes in Axios, and U.S. officials were surprised that Iran rejected this so strenuously. And then by about 3:30, all of a sudden, okay, we'll talk about just the nukes, and it's back on. The talks are back on, and they'll be in Muscat in Oman. So, that's the status as of now. Could that change in the next 24 hours? Absolutely. The Zionist lobby is crazed over this. They insist that they've got to talk about the ballistic missiles. And look, and it's not even the ballistic missiles. This is about only one thing: regime change. That's it. They got to get rid of those Muslims, particularly these Shia Muslims, because they're the number one terrorist organization in the world, which is a complete, utter lie. I mean, factually not correct. You can't show me the data. Show me the attacks. The ones that attacked us on 9/11 probably was, with some CIA complicity, maybe, and definitely Mossad knew it was going to take place. Were the Sunnis, Sunni extremists, the Takfiris are called, or Salafists, or Wahhabis. These are different sects, but the commonality is they believe they've got the truth of Islam. And if you deviate from their truth, they'll kill you. And it doesn't matter if you claim to be a Muslim and you're a Shia. unless you're doing it their way, there ain't any other way. Well, the Shia and Islam in particular, the Persians and then among the Arabs who are Shia, they've always fought against that. They're a little bit more, let's put it into Christian terms. The Sunni Muslims are like the strict Catholics. It's that way. And the Shia Muslims are more like evangelical Protestants. Okay. So yeah, they're a little bit more free and open to new ideas. So this regime change obsession is crazy. But then now here's what's driving me crazy. They keep talking about this armada that has been assembled off the coast of Iran, and a question in my mind came up. Well, how big is that armada compared to what we tried to do to the Houthis? And started looking. So when we went after the Houthis last March in Operation Rough Rider, there's a lot of what I'll call male homosexuality imagery. But Operation Rough Rider, at one point, we had 2 aircraft carriers in the Red Sea. We had 4 destroyers. We had 1 cruiser. All of them are loaded with these missiles, called VLS cells, vertical launch system cells. And we were there for 7 weeks. We lost 3 F-18A Hornet combat aircraft. We lost 7 MQ-9 Predator drones at $35 million a piece on that. And the mission was real clear. We were to go in and establish freedom of navigation, meaning anybody could sail up and down the Red Sea. If they wanted to sail to Israel, they could, and the Houthis couldn't stop them. Our second mission, we got to degrade the Houthis' military capability. And third, we got to break the Houthis' ties to Iran. Well, how'd that work out? We failed.
Yeah. Goose egg.
Zero. We found it was difficult to find their missiles and blow them up, even though we had complete air supremacy. We could fly all over Yemen without worrying about getting shot down. But we failed to stop them. So then I looked at our armada that's sailing off the coast of Iran. It's smaller. Instead of 2 aircraft carriers, we got 1. Instead of 4 destroyers, we got 3, and they don't have a cruiser. And it's like, and here's the kicker. In the Red Sea operation, Rough Rider, those destroyers were fully loaded with air defense missiles in those cells. However, for this mission, half of those cells are devoted to Tomahawk cruise missiles. Going to launch those into Iran. And so that means those destroyers have half the air defense capability, and their principal job is to save the aircraft carrier from being attacked. So now they're down to like 50 missiles. And then when you do the math and realize that for every Iranian missile or drone that comes at the ship, and if they use an air defense missile, they're going to use 2. So if you got 50, that means you can handle a maximum of 25 missiles or drones. And after that, you're out of ammunition. And the only way you can get more ammunition is you got to sell, in this case, probably to Diego Garcia, where they physically have to load. They got a big crane. The crane picks up the cell and drops it into drops it in. Well, then you got those Tomahawk missiles. Now, because they're afraid of Iran's got drones that can fly 2,000 miles. They've got anti-ship missiles that have a range. Actually, I don't know off the top of my head what the actual range is. I have to research that. But as a consequence, it's believed that the U.S. fleet is staying about 1,000 miles offshore. Well, what's the range of a Tomahawk cruise missile? 1,000 miles. So let me see if I got this straight. We're going to cause massive destruction in Iran by firing a missile that will barely make it to its beach. So we're going to blow the hell out of the sandy beaches. But beyond that, we're not going to do much. So that leaves air power. Now, I know Doug McGregor is a lot more optimistic about our capability to bomb inside Iran. I'm not, because I believe that Chinese and Russians have provided significant upgrades in air defense systems to Iran. You know, before the 12-day war in June, the Russians had offered a lot of assistance. You know, they knew what was coming, and they'd offered it to Iran. And you know, Iran was, they're like that cranky woman from the Excedrin commercials back when you and I were kids. You know, mother, please, I'd rather do it myself.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what Iran was doing to Russia. And Russia said, okay, if you don't want it, you don't want it. After they got, you know, they suffered a lot of damage that could have been prevented. And after that was over, Iran went back to Russia and said, hey, in fact, when it was at Pezeshkian or Arachi, one of them, when they showed up to meet Putin basically said, he said to him, you should have taken our help. You know, we should have taken our help. And the Iranians were so, we want it now. We want it now. Sort of like that scene at the opening of The Godfather, where, you know, the one guy, the one mortician is asking the Godfather to, you know, take care of the guy that beat up his daughter. And, you know, Godfather Marlon Brando sits there and says, you know, you don't show me friendship, you don't come to me. And so the guy goes, oh, please, Godfather, be my friend. That was Iran. Please, Mr. Putin, be our friend. And Vladimir, yes, we'll do it. So they've beefed up. That means, you know, if the U.S. is going to try to do any significant damage inside Iran, they're going to have to rely on aircraft. However, we have benchmark after benchmark in previous military adventures. Did we cause regime change in Iraq by air war? No. And we were bombing for weeks. And they didn't have air defense systems of any quality. So now these clowns are telling themselves, oh yeah, we can do this. We can inflict such massive damage that the regime will collapse. No, what you're going to do is, I believe, if we strike Iran, yeah, we're going to kill some people, we're going to cause some damage, and we're going to piss them off. You know, it's like, go kick that hornet's nest and see what happens. That little bit related to that, showing I have some personal knowledge. I was once playing golf at the Quantico Marine Base, and I hit a ball into the woods. And when I went in to retrieve the ball, I stepped on a hornet's nest. Ooh. The hornets came out swarming, and I was running. I came running out of the woods, and you could say it was like a cartoon. Yeah. You could see the cloud of angry insects behind me, and my partner was saying, "Keep running." Yeah. Okay, so if we're going to kick a hornet's nest in Iran, and Iran, instead of sending the stingers they've got are short range, intermediate range ballistic missiles that can knock the tar out of Israel all day long, and every single military base we have. So, you know, it'll be a short war from the naval standpoint, because you know, once we fire those ships have to fire off their defensive missiles, they're going to have to get the hell out of the air and go reload. And so that means they can, depending, you know, I'm predicting that Iran's going to use swarms of drones and missiles. And so they're capable of doing that. You know, if they do like 100 per ship over, you know, if they do 100 per ship, even over 3 days, they're out of ammunition. They got to bug out. So then that takes them 3 days out, 1 day to reload, 3 days. So you know, they'll fight for 2 or 3 days and then run away for a week, fight for 2 or 3 days and run away for a week. Meanwhile, sailing towards Iran, you have the Chinese and Russian warships. They're coming to conduct the annual joint naval military exercise with Iran. That, they didn't just gin this up because of the U.S. threats of late. This has been planned for more than a year and a half, and they've been doing it every year, roughly end of February, 1st of March. So you tell me what's going to happen when all of a sudden now you got Chinese and Russian warships. They're sailing alongside Iranian warships that the U.S. is going to start shooting. I don't think so. So the point of all this is I think Iran is in a very, very strong position to resist. And Trump has no good options. He's looking, he wants a one and done, a quick hit and a collapse. We've got it. It didn't happen in Vietnam. Hell, we couldn't do it to Panama. It took us, 3 or 4 days? And we had our own military bases in the country, for God's sake. So this Hollywood mentality that, we send a special force, like what happened with Maduro, it was a complete inside job. They got in and out in a few hours. And now Trump's convinced they can do that with Iran. No, Iran ain't Venezuela. So that's my rant.
I'm with you. And as far as that Operation Rough Rider, I have a feeling Lindsey Graham named that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a feeling that was his choice of terms. I have a feeling if you ask him to name any, they're always going to be Operation Rough Rider.
Yeah, it got the heavy breathing going for him.
But at any rate, here's the thing. I understand. What do you know about? Apparently, some drone was flying along over top of one of our ships, and it was allegedly shot. What do you know anything about that?
Okay, so I take partial responsibility, or I think I may be partially to blame for this drone. Now, I understand I haven't looked up this particular model, but it was a Shahed 136. But see if that tracks. But on January 30th, Iran flew a Shahed 149, and that drone looks like an exact copy of an MQ-9 Predator, the Reaper. And it filmed the deck of the ship, it filmed the escorts, and it was broadcast on January 30th on Iranian press TV. So I wrote about this on Monday of this week, saying that the Iranians have overflown the aircraft carrier, and the aircraft carrier either didn't detect it or decided it wasn't worth attacking. And I think somebody read that and said, "Oh my God, we can't let that happen." And they went and reportedly shot this one down. Iran hasn't reacted.
Now this is the 136. Now the 136.
Yeah, okay.
Apparently that looks more like the suicide type drones, like the geraniums.
Now look at the 149.
Okay.
Type that in.
149 drone. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. There we go.
Yeah.
It looks like ours, the Reaper or whatever it is.
Yeah. Now that's a drone. Okay.
Yeah. So that can carry missiles and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. It does. It can do reconnaissance, surveillance, and firing. So it's the whole package. And so that's what flew over the aircraft carrier, at least one of those, maybe two of those, on January 29th, January 30th. And so then, day before yesterday, February 3rd or February 4th, Iran shoots down one of the little triangle dudes. The U.S. shoots down one of the Iranian 136s. So did they? Maybe. Can't rule it out. But the point is that if that 136, which they got lots of those.
Yeah, like many, probably tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of those things.
Fire 100 of those at the ship. Now, let's let's put you back in the day when when you're in law enforcement and you're carrying a semi-automatic pistol that can carry, let's say 16 rounds of ammunition, and you got a crowd of 50 people and they rush you. You might be able to shoot 16, 18 of them, some through and throughs, but the rest of the crowd's going to show up and beat your ass.
There's a
And
famous,
that's what's going to happen to the U.S. destroyers.
There's a famous Stalin quote. You probably heard it before. When they asked him about quantity versus quality, and he said, quantity has a quality of its own.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's it. Well, the other part of it is this. It looks like they came up with the formula. The first time they hit the Israelis, they flood you with drones, they overload your system. You can only track but so many things, and then the missiles come in right through the drones, and you just overload, your system's overloaded.
Yeah, and in fact, and during the January 12th or the June 12th engagement, the initial missiles that Iran fired were some of its old stuff. They weren't, they're doing like the miracle at Canaan by Jesus. You remember what, when he turned water into wine?
Yeah.
He saved the best stuff for last.
Right.
You remember? You know that story's got to be true in the Bible, because one of the guests say, this is different. Most of the parties I go to, they wait till people get drunk and then they bring out the crappy wine. Man, you're serving the best at the last. Well, that's essentially what Iran did with its missiles. It saved its best towards the very end of that campaign, and they vowed this time they're going to start with the best. And there's not a thing the U.S. and Israel can do to really stop it. But here's the danger. Doug McGregor, Danny Davis, and myself, we've all heard from people within DOD, within the whole DOD umbrella, from active duty personnel. They really believe that they can overcome Iran. They really believe that U.S. air defenses will defeat Iranian missiles. I'm just saying, man, you guys are making some bad assumptions. I mean, candidly, if we were that good at stopping them, why haven't we been able to stop the Russians?
I was going to bring that up.
Yeah.
Because the Iranians initially helped the Russians with the Shaheeds 136s, and then the Russians took them and added some stuff and turned them into the geraniums, and they just crank them out, and they just keep throwing them at you about 100. So you can imagine they have been stocking these things for a long time. They can just keep throwing these things at you, and ultimately, these guys are violating the first rule of conflict, right? Never underestimate your adversary. I mean, and here's the thing about it. If you're the Iranian government, what do you have to lose? They're basically saying, we're going to destroy you. We're going to take you out. We want to see you gone. If somebody says you never want to fight a person, in law enforcement, I can tell you this, you never want to fight a guy that's been in prison. Man, those guys can fight. Why? Because every fight they get in, if they get in a fight with a guy, they got to worry that some guy's going to run in the back and shank them. Every fight they get in is like a fight to the death.
Yeah.
And those guys, you see a guy from a prison you don't fight that guy. He throws it, he bites you, anything. If he can find a cord, he'll wrap it around your neck and try to choke you. Every fight is a fight for their life. And you don't want to fight a person who's fighting for their life. Iran has nothing, their government has nothing to lose. They're like, you finally coming and you're going to destroy me. You may get me, but damn it, I'm going to throw everything. I'm going to be out of missiles and you're going to be hurting. Donald Trump cannot come home with a bunch of flag draped coffins, or he's finished.
Yeah. No, and that's what he's getting talked into, and I wouldn't put it past it. He's been deliberately lied to, maybe for that very reason, to have him be completely exposed as an incompetent, because he likes to project strength, but he's out of touch with reality on a whole variety of issues. I just, saw it today. He thinks the economy's doing great. They just had a jobs report, 22,000 new jobs. Huh? What? I mean, normally that number's got to be like 180,000 just to sort of maintain, and we're 160,000 less, and we're doing good. I mean, and it's, we're on the verge of a financial crisis, and then you want to go start a war with Iran? It's not going to be. It's not going to be a quickie. This is not going to be one and done at all. This
Now,
could.
what do you think about the I mean, have you looked into any, or have you thought about the not possibility, the probability that Iran would immediately close the Straits of Hormuz, and then what we'd be looking at as a result of that, militarily, economically, etc.
I think they will do what sort of like what the Houthis did, which is they've got enough anti-ship missiles, so they will be selective. Hey, if you're a ship heading to China, have a great time. Bon voyage. Is a ship going to Indonesia, Malaysia? Hey, happy trails. Ship going to Europe? Boom. Ship going to the United States? Boom. So they're going to they'll keep ships. They'll hurt the U.S. interests and countries aligned with Israel, and that means Europe. So they've got the ability to do that. The mining, they've done that before, and so they can do it. But it's the problem with mines is they don't discriminate.
Right.
Yeah. This is one of those situations where you do want discrimination. Okay, you want to favor some things over others, but Iran definitely has the ability to do that, and it is. They've also made it clear, though, that they're not going to accept any sort of token strike and token, where they get to just do a gesture. No, they're going, balls to the wall on this one. And on top of it, you've had declarations by the Houthis that, if it gets started, Houthis is going to be back in full bore,
which closes the Red Sea again.
Well, the Red Sea.
Now you got the Persian Gulf closed and the Red Sea, both of them completely closed.
Yeah, the Red Sea is still effectively closed. I mean, it hasn't really reopened. There's no ship going to Israel. The Houthis continue to blow those out of the water. And then the Shia population throughout the region have vowed that they will carry out retaliation. Now that's a problem for those the folks in the Emirates, United Arab Emirates. The rulers of that area, I'm told, are Sunni Muslims, but the majority of the population are Shia. And so if they rise up, yeah.
We know how that works.
A similar situation, at least the oil workers out in Saudi Arabia are largely Shia. Now, that's one of the reasons that was good news to get reconciliation between Iran and the Saudis. And so Iran's not going out of its way to piss off the Gulf Arabs, but they made it clear, if you're going to harbor Americans who are attacking us, then we're going to be hitting you. So and that's why a number have come out. The Saudis have told the U.S. you can't overfly our airspace. So the hope is the best outcome would be that when they meet tomorrow in Oman, U.S. and Iran, and they come to a tentative deal that they're going to put in place an inspection procedure that will guarantee to the West that Iran is not building a nuke, because Iran hasn't built a nuke up until now. And that the issue of enrichment of uranium, that's going to be, that'll be a little touchy, because right now Iran's been pretty firm. We're in a sovereign nation. We'll enrich any damn thing we want. But there'll be some pressure applied maybe from Russia and China to get them to make a deal, and a deal could be had. My point is that could produce a deal. If the United States says, no, that's not good enough, we're not going to accept that, then that means the U.S. is going to attack. And when the U.S. attacks, right now, I talked earlier today to Nima and Professor Morandi. So Nima is still in Iran, and both said that public opinion now in Iran is that Iran should get a nuclear weapon.
Yeah. No
That
question.
the only one holding out is the Ayatollah. He doesn't, yeah, and but the ultimate irony here is if the U.S. attacks, and the Iranians are going to get killed, and they're going to suffer damage. There's no doubt, but they're going to inflict a hell of a lot on the United States in the process. When that's over, because it will come to an end, Iran will say, basically, fuck it, we're getting a nuke, because they're not harassing North Korea. North Korea doesn't have to put up with this, and that's the thing. Iran is sort of naively believed there's something we can do that to please the United States. And again, I like to use movie references because people see them and they represent those situations. And this is like that scene from Independence Day, where President Bill Pullman is down and they're looking to see, where the alien is, and the alien has broken through and killed all the doctors, and so the alien's got his tentacles wrapped around the neck of one of the dead doctors, whose face is thrust up against the glass, and Pullman's thinking, "What can we do? What do you want us to do?" And the alien goes, "Die." That's the U.S. with Iran. There's nothing Iran can do that will satisfy us unless they die. That's what we want. We don't want to have we don't want to have an accommodation with a bunch of stinking Muslim clerics. I mean, that's our attitude. That, what we want an obedient bitch, okay? That's what we want. We want you to be our slave, to do what we tell you to do. We'll tell you when to jump, when to lay down, and when to roll over. That's what we want. And, the Persians are an ancient civilization. And those people, even though, they've been born, the ones who are alive now, they've been born in the last 80, 90 years at some point, but they still, within their culturally, they think in centuries.
Yeah.
United States doesn't. We're happy that we're going to celebrate 250, and I don't know if we'll ever make 300.
Yeah, Americans, it's like I remember going to St. Petersburg, and there's like, see that castle? Yeah, Tsar so and so built it in 16 so and so or 14, 15, whatever. Yeah, Tsar so and so built that. And you're riding down the road. I don't see that kind of stuff in DC and Baltimore and Richmond, right? And you come to realize that these people have a different view of time than they have a completely different view of time,
right,
and of who they are. This is who we are. This is who we've been for 1,000 years. It's a different view. And you're not going to push them around, and you're not going to threaten them with death. Oh, we're scared to die. No, the Russian people, they will die for Mother Russia. They will die for the motherland, the fatherland, whatever you want to call it. The Iranians, they're not scared. They stand for their Persian roots, whatever it was called, whatever empire, whatever it's called now. And I think there's only two options for the U.S. to either back down or fight them.
Yeah.
And the cost is too high for Trump. The price is just too high to fight him, I think. Way too high right now.
Yeah. Well, there's another, Nima pointed something out. So Nima's about the age of my son. He's like 42, 43. And Professor Morandi's older. He's about 55, I think. So Morandi is actually a combat veteran. He fought in the Iran-Iraq War. He got wounded twice.
Yeah.
You think he's this quiet, very polite, incredibly intelligent guy. You'd never know that he was also a badass warrior. So, but Nima's point was, when the war was going on, he was born, I think, like 1982 or 83. So the war was already underway when he's a baby. He had no memory of the war. That war was not a foundational part of his life. So you take every Iranian who's under the age of, say, 50 or 45, that Iran-Iraq war didn't become part of their consciousness. And what happened when this attack took last June, all of a sudden, it awakened that under 40 crowd to this threat. That the Professor Morandi's and older to get up into from his age to yours and mine, it was something that was common. It was something that was ever present. And so what Israel and the United States have achieved unintentionally is uniting Iran in a way that it had not been united before. And again, let's call that the law of unintended consequences.
Yeah, these people have a collective memory. You know what I mean? There's like a collective memory, and I keep bringing up Russia because I'm aware, and you've seen that when you go there, you realize that there's a collective memory of World War II.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, and that everywhere you go, there's memory, there's everything to remind them of the wars that they fought and all the things, and there's a collective memory. And so they're fighting in Ukraine. That collective memory of World War II. The guy that was our driver the last time I was there, he was maybe 30 if he was up, but you couldn't find anyone more dedicated to the cause of my country's at war. Nobody could be more dedicated than this guy. That was his whole life, dedication to the cause, right? They have a collective memory. And so yeah, I understand what you're saying. The Iranians, when that happened, that collective memory of these people to say, well, this is our country. It's not like they're like, oh, let's turn against the government. It's just the opposite.
Yeah. Well, in fact, to underscore that. So one of my colleagues, classmates from my career trainee class, he was a case officer, and he was running. He had Iranian assets, and so he had a meeting, and this Iranian asset shows up, and was extremely upset. And so my buddy said, "Well, what's wrong?" And the Iranian began saying, "Oh, I mean, I've just been thinking about this massacre. They killed," and he started talking about how many women and children were killed and the devastation. And my buddy goes, "Oh, I hadn't heard about." He said, "Okay, what happened? Where did this happen? How many? And when did this happen?" And the Iranian stopped and goes, 724 AD. Now, he was talking about it like it just happened last week. And that's the thing, what you were referencing, that we ain't got that in America. At least, the average, anybody that showed up here since 1735 and after, we don't have that. You might make the case that some of the Native American Indian tribes, that there's a longer memory, but the average American doesn't have that kind of perspective.
Let me ask you this: your thoughts on what's happening in Ukraine before we go. I got a couple more, about 5 more minutes, but your thoughts on what's happening in Ukraine as far as the Russians now saying, you know what, we're turning the lights out.
Yeah,
we're turning the lights out. And how do you maintain a country when the lights are turned and they ain't coming back on?
Yeah, it's I've lived without electricity in Honduras once back in 1978, and you can live that way, but it's rough. And I don't want to be doing, we were taking care of nature's call in an outhouse. It's one thing to be in an outhouse when it's, basically like 65 degrees at night. It's another thing if it's 60 below zero. Okay. Not quite. Well, and let's look at the negotiations that are underway in Dubai. Those are going nowhere. I mean, it's not going to achieve anything. Russia's position is fixed. It's not flexible. And the position is, Ukraine, you vacate Zaporizhia, Kherson, Donetsk, Luhansk. Get the hell out. Get out, and tell NATO to get out. And also, you're going to have an election. That's the Russian position. That is not negotiable. What could they negotiate on? Okay, we could negotiate on withdrawing the troops that we have now in Dnipropetrovsk and Sumy, Poltava, Kharkiv, possibly. But these other is not, it's not negotiating over territory that you can keep half of Donetsk or whatever. No, not possible. And that's what the Ukrainians, so far, their delegations unwilling to make any compromise in that anyway. So it's just, it's a waste of time. I think this is Russia's only choice is to just beat the hell out of Ukraine, and in the process, beat the hell out of NATO and force NATO physically. This notion that there's some security guarantee that Europe and the United States can give Ukraine that will be acceptable to Russia. No, there isn't. So I mean, yeah, they're turning the lights out, and they're not coming back on anytime soon.
Yeah, and when you got literally millions of people, entire cities, and I was looking today, I mean, I looked at some of the temperatures like over the weekend. It's going to be 15 or so. One day it's going to be -2. One day it may get up to 4 or 5 degrees. When you don't have any electricity, every pipe bursts, everything freezes. I don't know how you survive. Millions of people in cities.
Yeah.
That is the collapse of an entire country. I imagine they're probably getting close to some major refugee crisis going into Western Europe.
Well, and it's going to affect, the social media addiction. Yeah, number one, your cell phones. How do you charge your cell phones? How do you power up your laptop or your iPad or whatever? And how about the transmission towers for the Wi-Fi? How does that work if you don't have power? So it's just, it's a breakdown in communications. And then you need the power, particularly in those buildings above 5 stories, to pump water. But if it's freezing, the water pipes freeze, they break. That means no sewage treatment, no flushing toilets.
No elevators. You got to walk up and down. If you're up on the 10th floor, so now they're pooping in a bucket, and then they got to carry it 10 floors down the steps, and it's spilling. So you walk in the stairs, and it smells so bad you can't barely walk up and down the stairs.
Yeah, and I can testify personally to that in Kiev back in 1994 when I was in Kiev at that time, and was actually in one of those apartment buildings, and it just smelled of urine because people were walking up the stairs and couldn't make it to the bathroom, so they take a piss in the hallway. But there is a positive side to that, though. Those who are doing that flights of stairs every day, they're being a hell of a shape.
Right about that. Except their feet will fall off from frostbite. Well, thanks a lot, Larry. Everybody, before we get ready to go, let me remind you of the important website that you have to go to. And the website is sonar21.com. Son of the American Revolution.
Yeah.
Is that some of the new American?
Son of the new American Revolution.
All
21st century.
There you go. And of course, as always, support us. You can use PayPal, you can use PayShoot, you can use Patreon, or you can use Buy Me a Coffee. But make sure, if you can afford it, that you help Larry out. All of this, trust me, guys and girls, this new media stuff ain't gonna make nobody a millionaire. But hopefully, you can get enough he can keep his website up. So if you can help him out, that's great. Larry, thanks a lot. Appreciate it, man. I'm going to get running.
All right, we'll see you next week.
All right, everybody, make sure you share this on all your social media platforms. We're out.